Emma had been the school nurse at Harrington Military Academy for 2 years. She knew which students skipped breakfast, which ones cried in her office about things they couldn't say at home. She was the quietest person on staff. That was exactly how she wanted it. At 9:14 on a Tuesday morning, a man walked through the front doors with a weapon. Emma saw him before he saw her. She read the situation in 4 seconds. Shaking hands, desperate eyes, the look of a man who had run out of every other option. He grabbed her, pressed the weapon against her side, and moved her toward the main office. Inside, he pointed the weapon at the staff. Everyone stayed down. Then he looked at Emma. She was already looking at him, not at the weapon. At him, the steady, cataloging attention of someone assessing a situation rather than surviving one. He stepped closer. "You scared?" Emma looked at him for a moment. Then she said the thing that made every person in that office go completely still. "I've been in worse rooms than this one." Harrington Military Academy was not the kind of school that appeared in college brochures alongside pictures of green lawns and smiling teenagers. It was a working military prep school. Brick buildings, a parade ground that got used every Friday morning, and an ROTC program that produced more officer candidates per graduating class than most schools produced graduates. The students who attended came mostly from military families, which meant they understood certain things about discipline, duty, and showing up, even when showing up was the last thing you felt like doing. Emma had chosen it specifically for that reason, not because she had any military connection she was willing to discuss with anyone on staff, but because she had found, in the 2 years since she arrived, that the structured orderliness of a military school was the closest thing to peace she had been able to locate since leaving a life she did not talk about. She knew every student in her medical room by name. She knew which ones were managing things at home that didn't show up in their academic records. She was the quietest member of staff, and that was exactly how she intended to stay. Marcus Webb arrived at 9:14 on a Tuesday morning in a gray pickup truck that he parked slightly crooked in the visitor lot, which was the first sign that the morning had not gone the way anything in his life had gone recently. He was 41 years old, former Army infantry, 2 tours, an honorable discharge, and a service record that contained nothing he was ashamed of. What it did not contain was any preparation for a family court judge telling him 3 days ago that his access to his 16-year-old son was now limited to supervised visits every other weekend. Marcus had driven to Harrington not because he had a plan, but because he did not have one. Because the version of himself that made plans had spent 3 days staring at a ceiling, and the version that showed up this morning had simply gotten in the truck and driven to the one place where his son still was every day. He brought the weapon because he always carried it legally and had not thought, in the narrowed state of mind he had been inhabiting since the judge's ruling, about what it would look like walking through a school door. The security guard at the front desk saw it first. He did not reach for his radio fast enough. Marcus was not aggressive. He did not threaten the guard, did not raise his voice, did not make any of the demands that would have given the situation a clear shape. He simply held up one hand and said quietly that he was not going to hurt anyone and that he needed to see his son. The guard backed away. The intercom at the front desk activated the lockdown protocol automatically, and the practiced response of a military prep school to a security alert was already moving through the building. Classroom doors locking, students moving to safe positions, ROTC cadets in the gymnasium being directed to the far wall, before Marcus had fully registered that the morning had become something different from what he intended. Emma was returning from a morning medication round on the second floor when the lockdown tone sounded. She was in the main corridor, a small supply bag over her shoulder, halfway between the east stairwell and the administrative wing. She heard the tone, registered its meaning, and in the same moment she saw Marcus through the glass panel of the corridor door below. She stood very still for exactly 4 seconds, doing what she had been trained to do in a life she did not discuss with anyone at this school. She read the situation, shaking hands. He was not composed. Desperate eyes. He had not planned past this moment. The weapon carried low rather than raised, not looking for a confrontation, looking for a resolution to something that had already gone wrong before he walked through the door. She understood all of this in 4 seconds. Then the door below opened and Marcus came into the corridor and saw her. He grabbed her. She allowed it, not because she had no choice, but because she had already determined that allowing it was the correct decision for the next 60 seconds. He pressed the weapon against her side and moved her toward the main administrative office. Inside, 4 staff members, the principal's assistant, 2 administrative staff, and the vice principal, froze when Marcus came through the door. He told them to stay down and stay calm, and that nobody was going to get hurt. His voice shook slightly on the last sentence. Emma heard it. She filed it. The office door closed, and the building outside went quiet in the way that buildings go quiet when everyone inside them is holding their breath. Emma sat in the chair Marcus directed her to, and did what she always did in rooms that required it. She made herself invisible, not by shrinking, but by becoming unremarkable, by taking up exactly the right amount of space and no more, by making every movement slow and deliberate and unthreatening, while the mind behind the movements worked at a completely different pace. She watched Marcus. She counted the exits she already knew. She noted the positions of the other staff members and the distance between each of them and the door. She noted that Marcus kept looking at his phone, waiting for something or someone, and that the weapon in his hand had dropped 2 inches since he sat down, which meant the adrenaline of the first 5 minutes was beginning to metabolize. And what was underneath it was not aggression, but exhaustion. The police arrived outside in 6 minutes. She heard the first siren at 9:20, and the quality of the radio traffic that followed told her that whoever had taken command of the scene was experienced and was not going to do anything hasty. Marcus heard the sirens too. His jaw tightened. He looked at Emma the way people look at the nearest available face when the reality of what they have done begins to arrive fully. He asked her the question that had been sitting in the room since the moment he grabbed her. "Why aren't you scared?" Emma looked at him steadily. She had been asked harder questions in smaller rooms by people considerably more dangerous than a 41-year-old man with shaking hands who wanted to see his son. She said, "I've been in worse rooms than this one." The office was completely silent. Marcus stared at her. And then, slowly, his eyes moved across her face, her posture, her hands resting completely still on her knees. And something shifted in his expression. The dawning recalibration of a man who had just understood that the person he grabbed in the corridor was not the person he assumed he was grabbing. He said it quietly, almost to himself. "You were military." Emma held his gaze. "I was a medic," she said. Marcus looked at her for a long moment, then shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "You weren't." The office held the suspended quiet of a room where everyone has heard something they are still processing. The vice principal was staring at Emma. The administrative staff were staring at Emma. Marcus was staring at Emma. She was looking back at him with the same level and unhurried attention she had been wearing since the corridor, which was exactly the problem, because a school nurse taken hostage at gunpoint on a Tuesday morning was supposed to look frightened. And Emma Carter did not look frightened. And Marcus Webb had spent enough years around people trained to manage fear to know the difference between someone who was hiding it and someone who had replaced it with something else entirely. The negotiator called at 9:31. Marcus answered on the second ring, which told Emma he was not ready to stop communicating. A man who had genuinely closed off would have let it ring. She listened to both sides of the conversation with the practiced attention of someone reading a tactical situation. And what she heard in the negotiator's careful cadence was exactly what she had expected. The standard approach, the patient language, the deliberate pacing designed to slow a situation down and buy time for options to develop. It was competent. It was correct. It was also not going to reach Marcus Webb, because Marcus Webb had not come to this school for a negotiation. He had come to say something to his son, and the negotiator's language was already treating him as a problem to be managed rather than a person to be heard. She could see it in the tightening of his jaw. She started talking to him after he hung up. Not immediately. She gave him 2 minutes of silence first, because 2 minutes of silence after a phone call that produced nothing was exactly long enough for a man in his position to start feeling the full weight of the morning. Then she asked him about Daniel. Not about the custody ruling, not about the weapon, not about what happened at the front desk, about his son. What grade was he in? What did he want to do after school? Had he decided yet? Marcus looked at her with the suspicious expression of someone expecting a trap and finding a question instead. He answered. Slowly at first, then with the unguarded quality of a man talking about the one subject that still made sense to him. His son was a junior. He was thinking about following his father into the army. He was good at the things this school valued, and Marcus was proud of him in a way he had never quite found the language for. Emma listened without redirecting, without steering, without using any of the techniques that would have made the conversation feel like a technique. She just listened. The office temperature dropped by several degrees of tension. Outside, Captain Ray Donovan had been running the scene for 22 minutes when his communications officer tapped him on the arm and pointed toward the monitor connected to the school's intercom system. The internal audio feed had picked up Emma talking the vice principal through a breathing exercise 3 minutes earlier. The VP had been on the edge of a panic attack, hyperventilating quietly in the corner, and Emma had managed it in 90 seconds without Marcus appearing to notice she was doing it. Donovan listened to the recording twice. Then he pulled up the staff files for Harrington Military Academy and found Emma Carter's employment record. 2 years, clean, exemplary reviews. And behind it, where a prior employment history should have been. A gap, not an omission. A gap with a specific shape. The shape that Donovan, who had spent 12 years in naval intelligence before moving to law enforcement, recognized immediately as the outline of a classified service record. He stared at the tablet for a moment. Then he told his communications officer to get him access to the school intercom system. Marcus had been watching Emma for 40 minutes by the time he said it directly. He had been cataloging her the same way she had cataloged him. He had watched her hands stay still through 2 negotiator calls and a vice principal's panic attack. He had watched her eyes move to the office door every time a sound came from the corridor. Not with anxiety, but with the assessing attention of someone filing information. He had watched her position herself across the course of 40 minutes and a dozen small, unremarkable movements, so that she was now sitting closer to the door than any other person in the room, in a direct line between Marcus and the 3 staff members furthest from the exit. She had done it so gradually and so naturally that nobody else in the office had noticed. Marcus had. He leaned forward. "Medics don't watch exits," he said quietly. Emma looked at him. "Medics don't count shooters." A pause. "And medics don't spend 40 minutes moving 3 feet without appearing to move at all." The office was completely still. Emma did not deny it. She did not confirm it. She simply held his gaze with the steady patience of someone who has been found out before and understands that being found out is not the same as being finished. Then the school intercom clicked on. Donovan's voice came through every speaker in the building. Calm, deliberate, the voice of a man delivering information he has already decided to deliver. He did not address Marcus. He did not address the staff or the students in their safe rooms. He said one name. Then he paused long enough for everyone in the office to understand that what came next mattered, and spoke 2 words that Emma had not heard out loud in 2 years. Angel 7. The office went completely still. Marcus turned to stare at her, and Emma closed her eyes for exactly 1 second. The only thing she had done all morning that she had not chosen to do. The 2 words hung in the air the way certain things hang. Not fading, not dissipating, just sitting there at full weight while the room caught up to them. Marcus had not moved. The 3 staff members against the far wall had not moved. Nobody had moved, because the intercom had done something that the previous 2 hours of negotiator calls and lockdown protocols had not done. It had introduced something into the room that nobody had a framework for. Emma opened her eyes. The 1 second was over. Her face was the same face it had been since the corridor, the same level attention, the same unhurried composure, but something underneath it had shifted in a way that the room could feel without being able to name. She looked at Marcus. He looked at her. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. Then Marcus laughed, not the laugh of someone who found something funny. The short, slightly broken laugh of a man who has just understood something that reorganized the last 2 hours into a shape he had not been expecting. He shook his head slowly. He looked at the weapon in his hand, then back at Emma, then at the weapon again. The expression of someone doing arithmetic that is producing an answer they don't entirely want. "I grabbed you," he said. He was not asking. Emma said nothing, out of everyone in that corridor. He looked at the ceiling briefly, then back at her. She waited. Then the sound came through the closed office door. Soft at first, the kind of sound a building makes when something is wrong but hasn't announced itself yet. Then clearer, breathing, the labored, escalating rhythm of someone whose airway was losing the argument it had been having with their body for the past 90 minutes. Priya was 16 years old, a ROTC senior, the kind of student who showed up early and stayed late and treated every drill as if the grade depended on it. She was also asthmatic, and the compounding stress of a 90-minute lockdown in a corridor outside a locked office. The anxiety, the stillness, the recycled air, the absence of her inhaler, which was in her locker 2 corridors away, had pushed her past the point her body could manage quietly. Emma had already been listening for 40 seconds and had already completed the assessment she needed to complete. She looked at Marcus. "I need the medical cabinet." She pointed 6 feet to her left, a white metal cabinet with a red cross on the front. She told him what was in it and what she needed and why in 2 sentences. Plain and fast. Marcus looked at the cabinet, then at the door, then at Emma. He was not a cruel man. He had never been a cruel man. That was the painful truth of the morning, that the thing standing in this office with a weapon was not cruelty, but desperation, wearing cruelty's shape. He stepped aside. Emma moved to the cabinet, opened it, took what she needed, and returned to her position. She did not use the 90 seconds as a tactical opportunity. She did not move toward the door, did not signal through the window, did not do any of the things the situation technically made available to her. Marcus noticed. It landed differently than if she had tried something, because trying something would have been predictable, and predictable was a category Marcus could manage. And what Emma continued to be was something he had no reliable category for at all. She knelt at the office door and spoke through it. Not loudly, not in the urgent and slightly performative tone of someone managing a crisis for an audience, but in the same flat, specific cadence she had used in places where the available equipment was considerably less than a white metal cabinet, and the ambient noise was considerably more than a quiet school corridor. She told Priya her name, and that she was going to be fine, and that she needed to do one thing at a time, starting with slowing the exhale. She passed the medication through the 2-inch gap at the bottom of the door. She talked Priya through using it with the patient repetition of someone who understood that a person in respiratory distress cannot process complex instructions, and needs the same simple thing said clearly until the body begins to respond. The other staff members in the office did not speak. Marcus did not speak. The office was quiet enough that they could hear Priya's breathing through the door. The labored rhythm of it, the slow and incremental change as the medication began its work, the fragile progress of a body finding its way back from the edge of something. Emma counted. She always counted. It was the thing she had never been able to stop doing since the compound. The involuntary measurement of time in situations where time was the determining variable. The other staff members didn't understand why her lips moved slightly. Marcus watched her without speaking. The number in her head climbed through 5, through 7, through 9, through the weight of 11 that had lived in her chest since a different room in a different country where the counting had ended differently. At minute 11, Priya's breathing through the door became regular. Not perfect. She would need monitoring. She would need follow-up. She would need the kind of proper medical assessment that the next hour would make possible. But regular. Controlled. The sound of a body that had come back from the edge and was now carefully moving away from it. Emma sat back from the door. The office was completely silent. She looked at her hands. Steady. The same as they had been since the corridor. The same as they always were in rooms that required it. Then she looked up. Marcus was watching her from across the office with an expression she had not seen on his face all morning. Not the desperation of the first hour, not the weariness of the second, but something quieter and more uncertain. The expression of a man who has just watched something that exceeded what he thought he understood about the person sitting across from him. The weapon in his hand had dropped another 3 inches without him appearing to notice. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he asked, in a voice considerably quieter than anything he had used all morning, "How do you do that?" Emma looked at him, and she understood. Sitting on the floor of a locked school office at 11:02 on a Tuesday morning, the question he was actually asking was not about the 11 minutes or the medication or the breathing through the door. He was asking about all of it. The stillness, the counting, the hands that never shook, the specific and total way she had been present in this room since the moment he grabbed her. Not managing the situation from behind a wall of training, but actually inside it. Actually with him. The way people are with each other when they have both been in rooms where the counting mattered and came out knowing something that can't be explained to anyone who hasn't. She looked at him for a moment. Then she said the thing that was going to cost her something to say, and that she was going to say anyway. "Sit down, Marcus," she said quietly, "and I'll tell you." Marcus sat. Not immediately. There was a moment where the instruction hung between them, and he waited, the way a man weighs something when he understands that accepting it means accepting a shift in the dynamic of the room he is currently controlling. Then he sat. The weapon stayed in his hand, but it was resting on his knee now rather than being held. The difference between a door that is locked and a door that is closed. Emma stayed on the floor where she had been since the door. The staff members against the wall had stopped watching the exits and started watching Emma. The unconscious reorientation of people who have decided, without being told, that the most important thing happening in this room is the conversation that is about to start. Emma looked at Marcus and told him about the boy in the compound. Not the classified version, not the tactical account, not the language of after-action reports and clearance findings. The human one. 8 years old. A compound that intelligence said was clear of civilians and wasn't. 11 minutes on the ground with everything she had and everything her training had ever given her, and it not being enough. The helicopter lifting while she was still counting. She told him she was cleared completely. The investigation said it wasn't her fault, and the investigation was right in every technical and institutional sense of that phrase. She told him that the clearance reached exactly as far as the paper it was printed on, and not 1 inch further into the place where she actually lived. Marcus listened without moving. He was a man who had lost things. His marriage, his daily access to his son, the version of himself he had been building toward before the judge's ruling arrived and took the floor out from under everything. And he heard in Emma's account something that connected to his own losses, not through similarity, but through recognition. The recognition of someone who understands what it means to carry a weight that the official version of events says you shouldn't have to carry anymore. He did not say anything when she finished. He looked at the floor for a moment. Then he looked up. Emma continued. She told him she had come to this school because she wanted to be somewhere safe. Somewhere that was the exact opposite of everything that her call sign represented. Somewhere with no weapons and no intelligence failures and no compounds and no counting. She told him the irony of the morning was not lost on her. Marcus almost smiled at that. Almost. Then Emma told him about Daniel. She had treated him twice in 2 years. Once for a sprained wrist from an ROTC drill that he had been trying to pretend wasn't as bad as it was, and once for something that had nothing to do with medicine and everything to do with a 16-year-old who needed an hour in a quiet room with someone who wasn't going to report what he said or manage what he felt. She told Marcus that his son had sat in her office on a Wednesday afternoon and talked about his father. Not about the divorce, not about the custody arrangements, but about a man he was proud of and missed, and did not know how to reach across the distance that the last 2 years had put between them. She told Marcus this not as a tactic, not as a therapeutic intervention, not as any of the things the negotiator outside had been trained to deploy. She told him because it was true, and because he deserved to hear a true thing about his son from someone who had been in the room when Daniel said it. Marcus looked at her for a long time after she said that. The weapon on his knee had not moved, but the hand holding it had loosened in a way that was visible to everyone in the office. Emma told him the last thing, that the worst thing she had ever done was not the boy in the compound. The worst thing she had ever done was let it turn her into someone who disappeared, who chose invisibility over presence, who spent 2 years being quiet in a school hallway when she should have been living. She told him Daniel was 16 and in this building, and that the version of his father Daniel needed to see come through that office door was the one who put the weapon down before his son came around the corner and saw what was in his hand. She did not raise her voice. She did not perform urgency. She said it the way she had talked Priya through 11 minutes. Plain, specific, relentless, true. Marcus looked at the weapon in his hand. He looked at Emma. He looked at the door. Then he leaned forward and placed the weapon on the desk between them, with the quiet, deliberate motion of a man setting down something he had been carrying for considerably longer than this morning. Emma picked it up and put it in the cabinet and locked it in one continuous, unhurried movement, and the sound of the cabinet drawer closing was the most complete sound the office had produced all morning. Donovan's team came through the door 90 seconds later. Marcus was taken into custody without drama. The inevitable consequence of a morning that had gone too far, handled by people who understood that the man coming out of the office was not the threat he had appeared to be 4 hours ago. Marcus looked back at Emma once before they moved him through the door. She met his eyes. She nodded once. He nodded back. Then he was in the corridor and the door was open and the office was full of people, and Emma was standing in the middle of it in her school nurse scrubs with her hands at her sides, exactly as she had been standing since 9:14. Daniel was in the corridor when his father came through. Not staged, not arranged, just the unrepeatable geometry of a building coming back to life after 4 hours of holding still. Father and son saw each other for 4 seconds. Marcus saw Daniel's face and understood, in the complete and permanent way that certain things are understood, that Emma had been right about what that moment needed to look like. Daniel did not look away. Donovan got on the school intercom before his team finished clearing the building. He spoke for 90 seconds in the plain and direct language of a man who has decided to say something and is saying it without performance. He told Harrington Military Academy that their school nurse had spent 6 years as a Navy SEAL combat medic in classified operations. That she had resolved a dangerous situation that morning without anyone being harmed, and that she had done it the same way she handled every difficult morning in this building, quietly, completely, without once asking for acknowledgement. He said, "Now you know who you have had with you." The students filing out of safe rooms heard it. The ROTC cadets emerging from the gymnasium heard it. The staff members who had been in the office heard it standing in the corridor, with the collective quality of people who are recalibrating their understanding of someone they thought they already knew. Several of them looked at Emma. Not with shock, with the quiet, settling recognition of people who have just been given information that made something they already sensed finally make sense. Priya found her in the corridor, still slightly pale, ROTC uniform slightly crumpled from the floor. She walked up to Emma and hugged her without saying anything first. The complete hug of a 16-year-old who has decided that words are insufficient for what she is trying to communicate. Emma held her for a moment. Then Priya stepped back and looked at her and said, "You talked me through that without even being in the room." Emma told her she had done the hard part herself. Priya looked at her for another moment, then nodded, satisfied, and went to find her friends. Weeks later, the formal notification came through. Emma's classified commendation officially entered into her permanent service record. Donovan's paperwork completing the process he had started the same afternoon the standoff ended. She read it on her phone in the school parking lot on a Tuesday morning. Same time, same cold coffee in the cup holder. She sat with it for a moment before she got out and went inside. The medical room was the same. The badge was the same. The door was open, and through it came the ordinary sounds of a school morning. Lockers, footsteps, voices. And for the first time in 2 years, those sounds felt like something she had earned the right to be inside, rather than hiding inside. If you liked this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and press the bell icon so that more heartfelt stories like this reach you first. Thank you.